Okay, my fever's increasing. Yeah, all right. Okay, that might affect how this goes. It's not high, it's about 100. But anyway, it went from 101 to 102. I know you don't care. The next part I wanted to do is to discuss Bowen. And since the chapter 6, Magic Patterns and Causes and Magic and Healing, I really wanted to kind of discuss, well, let me back up. You already read Scarborough and Luck's article on Wicca. The film you're going to be watching, hey, isn't technology wonderful? You can do everything on YouTube today. Or this week, how will I know? Anyway, the film that you should be watching about the history of Halloween talks a lot about Wicca as well, so I'm not going to go into that much detail about Bowen. What I do want to do in this particular clip is discuss a little bit about magic, or not magic, but healing and religion. It makes sense, if we're good Malinowskians, that magic would be tied, I'm determined to say magic, that religion and healing would be tied together, because illness, as an example, is something that we often have very little control over, especially serious illness. And Malinowski argued that that's when we turn to things like magic and religion, when we don't have control. And we see this relationship between religion and healing all over the world. It seems to be one of the go-to things for religion. People pray for the sick all the time in a number of different religions. It's one of the main ideas. And there are certainly magical charms and this kind of thing, and certain magical things that you might be able to purchase in the back of a magazine, like, you know, copper bracelets that are thought to have magic powers. People believe in a lot of cause and effect with health-related things that is more a magical belief, where there's no scientific evidence of a relationship between two things, but people say, well, I think that's true, and they go with their gut feeling. One of the things Bowen talks about is whether prayer really does have an effect on healing, and there have been some studies that have shown a relationship. Another study, and I can't recall if Bowen addresses this one directly, but I find it kind of a fascinating follow-up, tried to replicate a study that did show a positive relationship between prayer and people healing, even if they didn't know they were being prayed for. Obviously, if you know you're being prayed for, the placebo effect is going to kick in, and you'll probably think, okay, I should be getting better, prayers are being said for me, so that's good, and your body might respond to that. But when people weren't being prayed for, or they didn't know they were being prayed for, let me put it that way, there was still, in one study, people getting better. An effort to replicate that study was done. This was heart attack patients who were recovering from surgery. And oddly enough, the people who were prayed for and didn't know they were being prayed for actually did worse and had a greater chance of something going wrong in the recovery. So obviously you can look at data, and there's not always a causation between what people do and what the outcome is. Sometimes one thing will affect the other, and other times it's just a coincidence. But there is a strong belief that there's a relationship there. And Bowen talks about Christian Science. This is not to be confused with Scientology. Christian Science was started by Mary Baker Eddy, E-D-D-Y. I don't have my dates with me, but I think Bowen provides some. And she was a very sickly woman in the 1800s, during a time where women were getting a lot more involved in the U.S. politically. Christian Science is a very feminist religion in some ways. It's a form of Christianity, and it also is really related to its time period, the focus on science and what science could do to improve things. Mary Baker Eddy was married. Her husband died. She was sick enough that she lost custody of her child, and so she had a lot of interest in coming up with a way to be healthy again. And she hooked up with a guy who has the awesome 19th century name of Phineas P. Quimby. I love that. Anyway, Phineas P. Quimby healed people and did other kinds of things through what he called magnetism. And this relates to the work of Franz Mesmer in the, I think, 1700s. He was where we get the term mesmerist or mesmerism, which is another term for hypnosis. And the idea that Quimby had was that you could influence a person's magnetic fluids in their body if you relaxed them enough and told them they were going to get better. It was sort of mind over matter, which is kind of like the placebo effect, but this was almost that the person who was healing the person, their mind was controlling the person to a certain extent. And Quimby had this strong animal magnetism. He could influence people's magnetic fluids. There was a belief in this. It's not scientifically founded, but at the time people thought that could be true. And he did quite well. Mary Baker Eddy hung out with him, learned a lot from him, but when he eventually died, she was at loose ends. She slipped on a patch of ice and was injured very badly, ended up in a hospital, and she thought she was going to die. I believe the medical professionals thought she was going to die as well. And instead she took to reading the Bible. And while she was reading gospel stories about Jesus healing people, she realized that Jesus never said, "Oh boy, you're sick, aren't you? Here, now you're going to get better." Instead, he said to blind people, "You can see." He said to dead people, "You know, you're alive." He said to lame people, "You can walk." And so she decided that what this meant was that the truth was that they actually weren't sick, and Jesus could see that they weren't. And he conveyed the information to them, and once they realized the illness wasn't real, then they were healed from it. And looking through these gospel passages, she was healed instantaneously, checked herself out of the hospital, and started Christian Science. And she wrote Science and Health with a Key to the Scriptures, which was a book that was like a Bible guide. It wasn't a testament of the Bible. It's not holding itself up as a religious document. It's kind of like a guide for, Cliff's Notes for the Bible. This is where Jesus talks about healing. And Christian scientists believe that since healing is an illusion, it's an illusion created by the human mind, which is at odds with the divine mind of God who created reality. God would not allow things like illness or death, but because, human beings fell in the Garden of Eden, they lost that goodness, they can be distracted by things. They can believe in illness. And so Christian Science people believe that you should not do regular medical treatment if you're ill, because what can happen is you are reinforcing your mistaken belief that you're sick in the first place. What you need to do is have somebody pray for you and help guide you to a realization of the truth. I was sick, again, earlier this year, and a friend of mine's mother is a Christian Scientist, and she passed along to me that she was praying for me to know the truth. So right now, a Christian Scientist would say, your fever, I have a very slight fever, is only a manifestation of your belief that you're ill. If you realize that you're not ill, everything will fit back into place. This is going to be awkward. I'm going to check my time back here. I don't have a lot of time. I think I'm going to upload this and then do a case study of somebody who was raised Christian Science that I came across in my research on the next video.